This isn't set up as a kind of public hearing process where, members of the public would be asking specific questions and getting answers tonight. That would be later, I think, if we chose a specific path to go down. If you had attended the meeting in December, the board felt that these were very varied proposals, very different concepts, each one, and we wanted to get more information. So this is more trying to learn more from the proposers about what their vision is and what's in their proposal. And then the board will have a meeting later in January to discuss, next steps and if we were going to move forward with a specific proposal. So we are going to actually, though, go live tomorrow with the Ask Academy email address, which many of you here, I'm sure, are familiar with. So if you come away from this with a lot of specific questions that you feel need to be answered now, we will do our best efforts to work with the respondents to try to get a written answer to your questions. But as I said, you can also stand up during public comment, but we won't be responding to each public comment. So I just want to kind of lay that out for everybody here, and welcome everybody. So with that, I'm going to follow the agenda that was posted. I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I think we have this little flag in the back. Oh, okay. Well, find a flag and direct yourself. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, I will thank you. And then I'll move on. We had a consent agenda, just some housekeeping items the board needed to take care of. I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All right, consent agenda is approved. And now we'll move on to item number 4, which is the discussion of the expression of interest responses. And we have 2 tonight. And just for the public's awareness, there will be the other 2 respondents presenting on Thursday. So the first one up here is 7 Summits Realty. And with that, I would like to invite up, I guess,
Rowan Freeman.
Rowan Freeman. Okay, welcome, Rowan. And this is you know how to work everything, right? They told you?
Yes.
So we'll be over here and thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year to you. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas and Liz is going to pass out our presentation to the staff and the first select. And just wait for that to happen so we can get going. So they have our.
Sounds really loud. We have to close.
Okay, is that better? All right. Great, thank you, Liz. Good evening, First Selectmen Lyons, Board of Selectmen, staff, and members of the public. Thank you for your attendance. Just want to start by saying thank you for having us at this expression of interest and trying. Sure, it seems like I might just cut it out. My name is Rowan Freeman. I'm the president and CEO of 7 Summits Realty. At 7 Summits, our mission is simple: developing resilient, affordable communities. We see Madison as one of those very resilient communities. We envision a very bright and wonderful future for Heritage Academy School building that aligns very well with the town's Madison objectives and also with our mission. We're a team as a co-developer with S, who's here with me. You'll hear more about us tonight. And what we've come up with is a program that aligns with the affordable housing plan that was actually created by the town of Madison. So over the next 20 minutes, quick team introduction, talk briefly about our team experience, and we'll spend most of the time just reviewing the plan that we've come up with, as well as our financial stack, and then we'll just close out in summary. So with that, I'll have a co-developer again introduce himself quickly. Then
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Blake. I am with Nest. We are located in Waterbury specifically, and I'm also here with the other project manager at Nest, Tashina Pemberton.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Liz Torres. I'm a real estate development and finance consultant, and thrilled to be here with you all this evening.
Ron?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ron Caquaro with Studio Q Architecture. We're a small boutique design rented firm in Waterbury. We have a host of project types that we specialize in, one of which is adaptive reuse, multifamily housing, much of it done with the team you see here today. Thanks for having us. We're very flattered.
Good evening. I'm Laura Crossy, president at Crossy Architects. We're located in Hartford, Connecticut, and we specialize in multifamily housing and historic preservation.
Thank you. So, as we said, we're teamed with Nest. There's a reason we're teamed with Nest. And Ian will talk a little bit more about themselves, but Seven Summits is a for-profit development company that specializes in leveraging market rate housing to provide affordable housing units, which is why this project was so appealing to us. This is what we do in similar communities to Madison, and it's turned out pretty well. Ian, can you talk a little bit about this?
So again, Nest is a HUD certified nonprofit agency. That is, I think, something unique that we're bringing to the table. We do focus on creating workforce housing. We also do financial education as well. And we also work to make sure that communities are engaged as well, not just building housing, but they're also creating community connection.
And both organizations share a commitment to creating vibrant, inclusive communities that cater to the needs of seniors and working individuals. So with that, we'll get into the meat of our presentation, or we turn it over to the architects so they can introduce themselves and their experience before we get into the presentation.
Thank you. You might have noticed, but we have two architects on our team here. And this is a relationship where Crossy Architects will be the lead architect, the architect of record, and teaming with Studio Q, who will act as design architect. This team allows us to leverage Studio Q's design expertise and nonprofit relationships experience, and Crossy's historic adaptive reuse experience and our staff capacity. Both firms have extensive experience in multifamily housing and are currently working together in the same fashion on another multifamily housing project.
And finally, Liz. Liz is the money person, the most important person in you.
Hi, as I shared, I'll be the real estate development finance consultant on this project. My background is in affordable housing development and specializing in leveraging public funding through CHAPA and the Department of Housing. I'm most known here in Madison for leading the redevelopment of Wellington at Madison, which created 31 housing units and leveraged the low-income housing tax credit program.
So now into what we're proposing. What we're proposing is to rehab, renovate the existing building that's there, do a small addition that would create a total of 56 units on the site. And it would be 56 units of affordable housing. And the reason we think this site is perfect for that, it's only 0.4 miles from the train station, so it's within walking distance. It's within walking distance to the senior centers, walking distance to the banks, shopping. There's a Stop and Shop right there. And so we think it aligns very well, and we're providing some amenities as well for the site. I'm now going to turn it over to the architects to talk about the concepts and the plan itself and what we envision this looking like when it's completed. So Laura, ready to start?
As many of you may be aware, the Academy School is a historic structure. And with our proposed project, we plan to use the historic tax credit program. Therefore, the sensitive adaptation of the building is essential. We've completed many successful designs for school conversions into housing and understand the importance of maintaining the existing corridors, classroom spaces, as well as existing stair and entry locations to respect the historic character of the building. This is exactly what our design here does. The units are also dictated by the window quantities and locations, which best yield studios and one-bedrooms. As you can see in the image here, a handful of these units overlook the interior courtyard. The gym is another area for consideration. While the existing gym space could function as recreational space, it also makes for great loft units with high ceilings and large windows. This concept shown here yields 5 of those loft units. We have also, in Kroski's 40 years of experience with historic preservation projects and adaptive reuse, completed many historic conversions that also are accompanied by a new addition. When utilizing historic tax credits, the addition that needs to be complementary to the historic structure as well as subdued, giving hierarchy to the historic structure and maintaining the historic streetscape. This addition that we're proposing is doing just that.
Thanks, Laura. So I think it's important to realize what makes this building historic. If we can go back to that slide, Liz. So it's not just the traditional detailing, but it's the size and scale and relationship of the facade to School Street alongside the other buildings in the context of their buildings. So whatever we do to this building, we kind of have to have this hierarchical relationship where the existing building is prominent, and whatever we do is secondary and tertiary to that. So in this concept, we're taking a 13-unit elevated housing addition, putting it above new parking that will serve a new entrance to the overall housing complex quality and the community fields that are in place. The other thing we're doing is adding this linear park. This pocket park will help connect School Street and the parking on School Street and give a connection for the community to the community fields and a new entrance and help further separate the addition and the historic building, giving prominence to the historic building. So the next slide, if you can orient yourself at the lower level on the right, the main level and the upper level on the left, you kind of get a sense of how we're planning to lay this building out, both through adaptive reuse and the addition. The school building and the renovation would be the vertical plans you see, and then the horizontal sort of dog-leg to the upper left is the addition. So this sort of tan colored are 1-bedroom units, the blue color are studio units, and in total, we yield, as Rowan said, 56 units with the addition of that loft space that we're adding in the gymnasium. The next slide really, I think, gives you the sense of we're going to be very careful keeping what's here, keeping what makes this building rich and significant. So the corridors, the tall ceilings, the stairwells, the windows, the window openings, we're going to work around everything that's there and kind of surgically, adaptively reuse these new contemporary, high quality housing. The other piece is this new entrance we're adding that comes up through the heart of the whole project. And it again serves to separate the existing and the new, and also provide circulation to all the floors. And you can see how the loft units would work. All the living spaces on the first floor with a bedroom on the upper level that looks out to that double height space and looks out to those nice large windows that are at the gymnasium today. Next slide. So you're going to have to take my word for it. The addition is there. You can see how well it's screened here. It's pretty effective. We're able to kind of keep that form that's there today. You really don't see that addition. If you look at that lower right-hand corner image, you could see the addition way in the back, but when the trees are in bloom, at least, and that tree is existing, you really don't see it. The next slide shows what's really a gateway to this pocket park, from School Street to that, entrance and to the connection to the fields. What I like about this is that rich historic facade. The community can now interact with that and really engage it. And you really offer it back to the community with the addition of this park and this. So this is a view of the other end of the park. Kind of get a sense of the parking, the new entrance to the housing, and the relationship back to School Street. And the last slide just shows what that loft unit could look like. This is a way to really reuse this double height space and economically add a richness and a really nice aesthetic to a new interior.
Great. Along with the architectural features, we've also reviewed the reports on the septic system and the environmental concerns. So we have taken those into consideration in the budget that we're going to present. And it's our intent that we will provide a new sewer system to service the building and fully abate the building with all the environmental concerns. So along with this, with the pocket park that Ron talks about, we also intend to provide some pickleball courts for the community. Pickleball is all the rage. We also have a landscape courtyard and hopefully community flex space that could attract the arts. But that's left for further discussions once we get into more detailed conversations with the town. So just want to get into the economic benefits here. There's a reason we come up with this plan. You know, we've been into many communities like Madison, and one of the things we always get is, how is it going to impact the school system? This plan is well thought out. A lot of one bedrooms and studios, as well as targeting seniors. And the market rate units are more targeting younger population, just getting out of college, trying to get a self-start. So we don't see this project having any impact on the school system. Looking over the next 20 years, we see the town deriving an economic benefit through either pilot agreement or a tax agreement, where we're paying an annual tax to the town and little to zero liability back to the town, because we would be operating and maintaining the facility as a private development. This facility is going to create about 100 temporary construction jobs, maybe more, 3 permanent jobs. We expect to give preference to folks in Madison or the surrounding communities for the jobs that are being created here, which is what we do when we go into communities to do projects like this. Next slide. So just want to talk about the breakout. You just heard me say the targeted population, seniors, and I'm going to have Liz come up just to talk about the income distribution. But 25% of the units will be deed restricted for seniors, and then the others will be, there will be some deed restrictions for some of the affordable units as well.
Just want to remind you to speak into the mic, because part of this is also being live streamed.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. We can hear you okay, but just want to make sure that.
Great, so the proposed program for the residential units include offering housing to a mix of incomes, specifically for seniors and individuals. Individuals that want to take advantage of the rail line, individuals that work here in the city but can't afford or find housing options. The low-income tier is for senior housing for seniors earning 0 to 60% of the area median income. The second tier is for low to moderate income seniors. Seniors that don't qualify for subsidized or your standard traditional affordable housing, but can't quite afford to live in an assisted living facility. You know, we're targeting units to accommodate those moderately income seniors. And then the remaining units are going to be market rate housing, a combination of studios and one bedrooms. The rents that are being proposed are between $1,000 a month to $1,700 a month. And the rents were set using the Department of Housing's guidance.
Okay, so just to talk about where the funds are going, it's about $24 million total construction cost. And total development cost, I would say, with about 20, most of it going to the construction and then the soft cost. And how do we intend to finance this? So typically, when we put together a financing stack, we like to have some flexibility. If you have done real estate development, you know most times a financial stack just doesn't unfold the way it was envisioned. So in this case, we have some options if one line item doesn't manage to come to fruition. So we understand the town was previously appropriated about $8 million in funding. That's the blue line item there, that we think can be transferred to this project to help with some of the infrastructure, the pocket park, the sewer system, and the community room, and so forth. So it's not just benefiting the development, it's also benefiting the town. And this portion of the money will be going to that aspect of the project that's benefiting the community. And in return, the town benefits from having these amenities, but also from getting this pilot payment or tax incentive payment that we would be paying back to the town on an annual basis. We intend to leverage state and federal historic tax credits. As the developer, we are going to put in our own money, equity, both Nest and Seven Summits would be contributing to the equity line. And then we will finance the balance of the funding. I didn't talk anything about funding from Connecticut Housing Finance Authority or DOH. And the reason we didn't do that is because those are long funded line items. They take a long time and they're very restricted. Now, a lot of the projects we do uses those funding, but we think in this case, we could be quicker to market and make this project more viable. If, however, the town says, for whatever reason, we cannot reappropriate the funding that you already have to this project, then what we would do, we would go the conventional financing route. We would go to DOH and CHAPA, and we would ask them for their financing in this case, which would more than adequately fill this gap. So again, the project's about $24 million at an average cost of $425,000 per unit, which is well in line with what we see cost per unit being built at today. And I'll sum it up. I'll just wrap up really quickly. Just want to thank you for listening again. I think Seven Summits and Nest, this is the kind of project we love to do, where we're providing a benefit using an existing asset that the town has, converting it to something that's viable, but not only that, that the town can benefit from. I mean, so, you know, this has been a blight on the in the town for years, and we want to be a part of that transformation. You know, us with Nest, with their experience leveraging public funding will make this project go quicker. However, the reason we teamed with them as a for-profit development company is because we could move a lot faster than Nest can. That's why we are the lead developer in a 50-50 co-development partnership, because we don't have a board that we need to be beholden to. We could move this a lot quicker. We could take a lot more risk. They can't take the kind of risk that we can to make this project happen a lot quicker. I will say, very seldom you see a financial plan that has flexibility. I think we have a really good financial plan, and I think this is viable with a lot of flexibility. So something, if one funding stack falls apart, we could definitely make up for it in a lot of other line items. And I think this project, creates a critical need that provides for the town. So this is not us coming in and saying, hey, give us this property and we're just lining our pockets. We're trying to provide a benefit that's tangible to you while minimizing the impact it's going to have on the town. So the seniors that are coming here are seniors who are here now and looking for housing, and they can't get housing in Madison because maybe the rents are too high and they need to move out of town. So they will be able to come here. The senior center is a stone's throw away. So that will attract the population there as well. And finally, I'll say, we want to do this project in a very collaborative, community-focused approach. What do I mean? We will have meetings like this with charrettes to talk about what we're doing. We will meet with the staff, with the audience, with the residents frequently, kind of let them know what the plan is. We don't want anyone to guess what's going on, and we especially don't want you to get the news from your neighbor about what's going on. We want you to hear firsthand from us, and that's been our approach, and that's why we've been successful. Thank you for listening. I'll be happy to take your questions.
You very much for that very thorough presentation. I guess we can open up to questions. I think because this way they're here, we could probably do this since the team is here. So one question I just have, notably, this is a little different than what had been originally proposed, right? It was a smaller project. I know we sent out a kind of questionnaire saying, because some groups had additions added. And so we said, what made you decide to add the addition, I guess, the additional units, which would have been the piece of the parking lot, right? That's a new addition from the proposal we received in, I think it was the end of October, I think. So just curious what drove you to decide to add that to the proposal?
So typically when we do a project of this magnitude, we like to try to hit about 50 units. We figure when we hit about 50 units, financing becomes a little bit easier, a little bit better for us. And so, when we looked at it initially, we thought we could just get everything in the existing building. By doing the addition, we're able to get to that 50 unit threshold. That would just make this a more palatable project, and especially from a private development entity. With Nest being a nonprofit, we're happy to go back to the 40 unit because they can do those projects that are below the 50 unit threshold. But typically, we go into the private equity markets to finance. They're looking for that type of threshold.
Thank you. I'll turn it over maybe.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. You mentioned $3.3 million increase in taxes over 20 years. Can you just explain a little bit more about what that is? That a total after 20 years, the property will be worth $3.3 million more, or you're proposing that the improvements will make it worth $3.3 million.
No, so typically when we do these kind of projects, part of the way we make the financing more palatable to the financiers is to have a pilot agreement or tax agreement with the town. In this case, the way we got to that $3.3 million, we're paying you per unit tax payment every year. So I think that's about, Liz could tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's about $2,200 per unit per year. So every year we make that payment to you as a minimum. The other way we have done it is we say to the town, we'll have an open book and the minimum the town will get is X. And then we have an accounting after the books are closed and we look at what that is. It's an agreement, whatever the percentage is that the town benefits that.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
So this would be at a minimum of what the town would derive from that annually. Thank you.
So in the list of all the partners, I don't see a management company.
No, we have a management company that will be a part of this. We didn't bring one on, but we always have a management company to operate the facilities.
Okay, and the plan is this would be managed as a nonprofit entity.
Yes, so Nest also has a management company. So they may do the management, but we like to leave it open. Right.
Okay, and I guess my question is, on an ongoing basis, let's assume that this is the project that ends up going forward, who would we be dealing with as a town?
You'd be,
On the day in and day out.
you would be dealing with myself on a day in, day out basis.
That's when the project is done, residents are in place.
No, you would probably be dealing with the management company on a day in, day out basis, but we're not going anywhere. We have to make sure these projects are viable and sustainable.
Okay. And then my last question. You mentioned the grants that the town's already received, federal and state.
No.
Have we explored that those are in fact transferable over?
Yeah,
Or even still exist?
Yes, Liz, can you talk about this?
Yeah, I have more experience working with the state of Connecticut, Urban Act funding. So Urban Act funding is one of the more flexible funding sources that exist here in the state to fund community facilities and affordable housing. And will likely be, the state will likely be open to working collaboratively with the town to reprogram those Urban Act dollars. I'm less familiar with the USDA funding that you secured, but I think given the town's relationship with the federal government and what's being proposed, community benefits, I think there's a good case to be made to justify using those dollars to fund something that's a little bit different, but provides equally the amount of community benefit.
Okay, and I lied, I have one more question. Can this project be structured, or will it be structured such that existing Madison seniors would have the priority in obtaining housing there, and the same with the restricted workforce housing? Would our teachers and firemen and policemen, others that work in town, would they have first dibs, for lack of a better word?
I am so glad you asked this question. So if we're successful in having the town use this money and it's been appropriate, yes, we can do that. If not, and we have to go to DOH and CHAFA, we cannot do that. They do not allow preferential treatment for anybody. You have to open it to everybody in the state of Connecticut. That's why we're going this route, so that we could have preferential treatment for town of Madison residents. Because there's nothing here that restricts us from doing it in the funding stack. Typically, when we're restricted, because the funding stack doesn't allow this.
I just wanted to share really quickly my experience working on the Wellington at Madison lease up. I did not lead the lease up, the property management company, DeMarco, led the lease up. But we were very thoughtful about how we advertised and where we advertised these units being available to ensure that the residents of Madison at least learned first of the opportunities. We worked with the senior center to get the word out about the lease up. We had the lease up in a location. The applications were picked up locally here in Madison. So in the end, at Wellington at Madison, more than 130 applications were received for only 31 units. The majority of those applicants came from Madison and the kind of greater Madison area, if you will. That's the case in other kind of high and moderate opportunity areas that I'm working in. We'll work really closely with the town and the community organizations to be sure that the Madison residents hear about it first, and we'll have a local presence when accepting applications and things like that.
We'll delete this off the record.
Good evening, Mr. Freeman. Can you just clarify exactly what entity will own this property?
So it will, we will probably create a new entity. All projects we do typically is owned by a new entity that's managed by, in this case, would be managed by myself, and Kevin Taylor is not here from Nest, but Nest and Seven Summits would co-manage that entity. And that's typically when we work with a nonprofit organization, that's typically the way it goes.
And that will be a not-for-profit entity?
It could be either for profit or not for profit. If it's a non-for-profit, then Nest would probably be the lead. But typically when we have done it, it's just we've done most of them for profit entity. You still get the credit of the nonprofit entity because that's the nonprofit entity is part of the development and benefit from the development.
Thank you. One more question for me, Ms. Torres, maybe. Can you describe the process by which the decision-making process as to who gets admitted as a tenant?
I am many things, but I'm not a property manager, and I'm not I didn't lease up the units. But what I will say is that the owners will work really closely with the property management company to develop a tenant selection plan. So it's not unusual when you're competing for funding is to be proactive in developing the program and documenting that program in a tenant selection plan. So that is something that we could work collaboratively with the town, with the Affordable Housing Committee, to be sure that we have a tenant selection plan that we can all agree with. Now, during the application process, usually property managers have, pretty strict, rules about who they're going to house. So, there's a background check, there's a credit check, and all of that is outlined in a tenant selection plan. So it's clear, how, the rules that we're going to put in place to accept applications and the types of residents that are going to meet our requirements.
And I will also add, every town we work in wants to make sure that the development is benefiting their residents first. And we always find a way to accomplish.
So I just had a couple of other quick questions. One is the unit structure. How rigid is this to the model that you proposed? When I think seniors, my mother's a senior, but she wants a spare bedroom for her, family members to come visit and stay. So there's a benefit to having 2-bedroom units, even if it's targeted seniors. And can you break apart, like, the market rates would be 2 units, or is there something prohibitive in the building that would make it cost prohibitive to make 2 units or 3 unit?
Absolutely not. We typically don't get requests to provide 2-bedroom units, because typically what folks hear when you hear that we're providing 2-bedroom units, somebody's coming with kids, that's going to impact the school system. So we would be happy to provide 2-bedroom.
So there's flexibility if the town were to proceed to kind of figure out, and maybe it wouldn't change to that, but just there's an opportunity. It's not a structural issue with the building. It's not. It's just
No,
more a kind of trying to meet the market demand, I guess.
if we're really just trying to be as very minimal impact on the town's infrastructure as possible. So folks understand that this is not going to impact the school system, because typically education is the #1 usage of town funds. And we've had very difficult time getting projects passed when they're showing that they're going to have some kind of adverse impact on the school system.
But noting that your breakdown is you have majority market rate in your proposal too. So affordable is less than half of the units, correct?
Yes, but I also like to look at the range of the market rate units. All those market rate units fall within workforce housing definition. So if you look at the way the plan is structured, we could always go to the state and say, hey, we're providing workforce housing based on your definition of 60 to 120%. And that would be eligible for funding as well.
And then just a broader question about what you see as a risk of the building. Every respondent had an opportunity to tour the building. There was a lot of materials available about hazardous materials assessments, septic, that was available because of the community center project. So an extensive amount of engineering analysis and environmental analysis had been done in the building. What was your takeaway from that? And you put a budget together, and I know it's very preliminary and high level, but where do you see the biggest risks? And is there information that was lacking that could dramatically change, the economics of this project?
I'll answer your last question first. There's always information that's lacking until you go in and do your own due diligence. We tend not to rely on someone else's due diligence report, but we use it as information. So we want to do our own structural integrity review. We also want to do our own environmental review. Based on what I saw, it's a beautiful building. The bones of the building, the structure of the building is intact and very good. I'm not concerned about the debris. That's something that we have accounted for, so we intend to go out and clean everything out of the building. Nothing in the building is going to be safe. So everything is coming out, including the debris. And the building also needs to be abated for the environmental issues. So in that abatement, the interior of the building will be completely demolished and taken out to make way for these units.
To that point, though, will there be an attempt to preserve some of the historic qualities that are inside the building? Because that's
Yes. So
architectural.
Lauren, you want to talk about that? Because in order for us to secure the funding, we have to meet certain threshold and meet certain criteria. And as part of that is we have to take an inventory of the historical features that are there and be saved. So we don't have freedom to go in and just start hacking away at everything. We have to be surgical about it. I think Ron did talk about that. It's a very surgical process to get this done. But I'll have Laura talk about why we have to save some of that in order to qualify for the tax credit benefits.
So just a clarification on that, I think what Rowan is really getting at is it's more of a gut rehabilitation where we're not using any of the existing infrastructure in the buildings. All the piping and mechanical and lighting and electrical will all be new and up to code. And that's something that when we're working on a historic building, we understand is essential as a part of this rehabilitation. With that said, as I mentioned before, the key is to try to keep the structure and the layout, historical layout of the building. So with that, we would have all of the existing historic structure in place, as well as, for example, windows. It's always a goal on a historic project to restore the existing windows and keep that historic look from the exterior. And as well as with the exterior work, we're looking at a lot more restoration work on the brick. And all of the historic features on the exterior are more of a restoration. So just to clarify, that is more of a gut rehabilitation in terms of the infrastructure.
Thank you. So, two questions. One is, what assurances do we have as a town that this project would be successfully completed? Also, like if there was a financial distress or anything like that throughout the course of the project, what rights does the town retain?
So, the town, all the contracts that we have done with municipalities to make everyone feel at ease, there's always a clause that the project could go back to the town, the property to go back to the town. The other thing is, in order to get this finance, no one is going to give us money until we have some kind of construction insurance in place to make sure the project can go forward. So if we start this project and it's not going to get completed, believe me, the funders, their money is in. The only way they get their money back is if they get paid. So they would then come in, we'd have to float a bond. They would come in and using that bond to complete the project. So the town is not at risk in this scenario.
Okay, great, thank you. And then my next question is regarding the affordable units. Will there be any aspect of deed restriction for those affordable units? And if so, for what length of time?
So the deed restriction units would be the senior units, and those would be for 30 or 40 years, whatever the state says. So the state has a limited affordable housing deed restriction. Again, that's open to negotiations because we're not seeking funding from the state in this particular stack. However, if we do go the state route, then that will be on the table. So you have the ability to say, why can't we get the affordable units to be affordable for X amount of time, whatever that is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the thoughtful and detailed presentation. A couple quick questions, if you don't mind. So I'm going to be the somewhat skeptic in the room here. As you may or may not have heard, we went through a pretty thorough multi-year process to look at a community center. And the most recent estimate was around $24 million for the community center. Interestingly enough, your number came pretty darn close to that. But I'm wondering, given the addition that you're proposing, plus all the landscaping and you called it a park or something around it, how good do you feel about that estimate?
So we also build schools, and we're building schools at $800 to $1,000 a square foot. A private development would never be viable at those kinds of numbers. So it's on us. The other reason, that's one of the reasons we want to go this farming route, because we don't have to meet anybody's requirement except make sure the project is viable and meet the building codes. The moment we start to introduce CHAPA and DOH, they have a manual that's about 12 inches thick that we have to follow. And yes, we're prepared to follow that manual, but we're pretty confident with our costs. We have some fluff in here because we're used to doing these private development. We know what those costs are per unit. So I am very confident that this number works.
And do you have a sense, just, I know this is early in the process, but do you have any sense of the length to build? And then a recognition too, through the process of our community center build, hazardous waste was a huge topic. What are we doing with the hazardous waste? How are we mitigating that? Maybe just talk a few minutes about that, but just length to build and then hazardous waste.
Can you go back to the funding stack, please? So we have a line item here for brownfields funding that we intend to apply for to assist. We intend to use to assist with the abatement of building. We have to follow environmental laws in terms of abatement and disposal. Everything that comes out of the building has to be characterized. So before we can take anything out, has to be tested. Once it's tested and going to demolish and abate, that I was contacted by your Affordable Housing Commission during the library renovation. And incidentally, this is the one that had made the introduction. They had a vacant house that they were looking to see if they could create some affordable housing units in that particular building. That never materialized, but during that conversation, one of the projects that came up was this building, this Academy School building that they said would be a great location to provide affordable housing. At that time, I looked at it briefly and I thought this would be a great site for all the characteristics. And when I saw this RFP came out, I got very excited because of all the possibilities. And you want somebody that is not only going to line their pockets, but somebody that has the town's best interests at heart. Someone who's making sure that the town is going to get a fair and honest tax payment, a pilot agreement, that the town is benefiting financially. You also want a project that's going to provide back to the town. I mean, we could all say, we live someplace great, but I think providing access to housing for those who are not as affluent or, is also a responsibility of the community, which is why we're in business. We don't do we don't do 100% market rate developments. We don't do retail developments. We do one kind of development. We do development where we leverage projects like this, market rate units to provide access, housing access to seniors and those less fortunate. So I think, it's us appealing to the conscience of the community that this is a shared responsibility among all of us to make sure that we can all live. And if we grew up in Madison, we could stay here in Madison, even though we may not be as fortunate as others. And so this is what this development is about. It's about providing access to others so that they could live here. Seniors who are selling their houses and they want to go someplace else, but they don't want to leave Madison. This is an opportunity. One of the things that we find that happens very commonly, kids coming back from college and they can't find housing. This is an opportunity. I mean, so there's a lot of opportunity here to support the community in different ways. And I think housing, especially this project, is one of those ways to take a building that is blighted today, that's been a part of the fabric of this town for many decades. It's been empty for years, for decades, and to revitalize it and make it something that the town could benefit from in many ways. not just from a tax. And yes, it's great to get the tax dollars, but there's so many other ways I think town benefits, and that's it, you know, providing housing access. And I can't think of what would be more important than that, especially in today's economy. So, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for reaching the hour. So I appreciate the time and your team coming out and all the efforts you put in. And the board will be deliberating about next steps and how we're gonna move forward with this process, sometime later in January. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Just wanna make sure if you could email this, presentation so that we can make it available to the public tomorrow. We can put it on the website so people are aware of that, so.
Okay, I
Okay.
think
Oh, you got it?
have
Okay.
this presentation.
Oh, yeah, so they're sharing it. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
And
Appreciate
we'll
it.
take a 5Okay. Yeah,
If everybody could take their seats, please, because we're going to start the second presentation, please. Thank you.
oh, the camera's not working? Yeah, it is on, okay. I guess we
We have another second. We're fixing a technical problem with the camera.
Seems like this six once. I think that one better. I gave you that one. This does.
Northeast, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. I hate when this. Everything is not just a button. We have video? Audio? Audio? Yes, we have audio. Okay. Okay, that's, okay. I think we found it. Good. Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, looks like the camera's working. My name is Dimitri Karuta. I'm from Northeast Heritage Partners. And to start off with, I have an organizational update. Sorry, let me figure this out. So I was advancing this project through Northeast Heritage. Northeast Heritage, myself, and my pipeline has been absorbed into Connolly and Partners. Connolly is a larger development firm out of Manchester. I think this is a positive for the project. It is the same vision, high leadership, and a larger organization. Connolly is a developer in Manchester. They are in 18 communities, 9 states, and have 2,300 units under management. They do a lot of affordable housing units, mixed income, and adaptive reuse projects. We have our own in-house construction management teams that have experience and a large track record on ground-up construction, adaptive reuse, retail, multifamily. We have our in-house property managers. We're in the area. We're working in projects throughout the country. And with moving over to Connolly, we have a larger development team. As well as myself, I have Andrew, Eric, Chuck, and Sven. We have expanded competencies, different types of projects we work on. My focus has always been on adaptive reuse. So why Academy? My focus has always been on adaptive reuse projects. My portfolio or client work and my work has always been on historic adaptive reuse. Everything involves a historic tax credit component. I was brought into Connolly, continue advancing that pipeline and bring a larger adaptive reuse portfolio to their firm. We find Madison a great place to do business. We want to invest in Madison, and we want to reutilize historic assets just like Academy. My vision simply for this project is to utilize the structure that is there, add 25 units in a mixed use capacity with anchoring health and wellness facilities. Front of the building anchored with a dance and fitness studio, in the rear of the building anchored with a paddle racket sport facility. I believe this plan does align with the town's goals. We will have the town own the land. No upfront capital required from the town. We're preserving a historic asset with private funding and the historic tax credit funding. Additional businesses and downtown residences will increase traffic to the area. And it allows the building to be used by the public. If it was 100% multifamily, it would mostly be used by the residents and not be open to the public. My current vision of this project is 25 residential units, although with a full design team, there's a chance for a few additional units when they had their chance to review. There's some subgrade units that we weren't sure we could add. A lot of what I'm designing here is to reuse what exists, as opposed to some of the other teams that were looking to do a full gut. I think my approach is low touch. It's going to be adding the necessary systems to make modern units, but to keep the character of that building complete. As I said, the public amenities will be the 3 paddle courts in the previous gym, the dance and fitness studio in the front of the building. And we chose these options as they could be integrated into the building, have a lower noise impact to the tenants, as opposed to something like pickleball, which has a noise problem associated with it. We're seeing a lot of these courts go into new projects throughout the country. This is a growing sport. It is very popular in Europe and South America. It is coming to the US. We're seeing them open up in Boston, New York, all the big cities. We're starting to see some in Connecticut as well. They will attract people to this town because it is a unique offering to Connecticut. So all of my projects focus on adaptive reuse, preservation first. My vision, my process is to work closely with the State Historic Preservation Office and National Park Service to come up with a plan that fits and works with their strict criteria for renovation. They're part of the process during planning. And I think this project is in very good condition. It is, a lot of the projects that I've taken on have no roof, maybe no windows, water damage throughout. This project is, a lot of it is salvageable. It doesn't have the systems, but it has the layout. It has the classrooms, which could be converted to units. I think a low-touch approach allows us to come in, do this project, and not have to knock every wall down and then rebuild them. It's a cost-effective approach. The tax credits help with this process. And it allows us to do this project without seeking additional and a more complicated capital stack. The deal structure I'm envisioning is, as suggested, the 99-year ground lease with the town. We're looking for the town to contribute the property to Connolly to allow us to control the asset, incur the cost of development, incur the ongoing operation and maintenance of the building. And then the ground lease would allow us to have some shared, I'm not sure where it ends and where it begins, but the building itself will be Connolly's. And go from there. One of the questions asked was, will we use affordable in this project? Connolly and partners are experts in affordable. A lot of the projects in their portfolio, and I have some I'll show at the end, are affordable. We chose to present this project as market. We have affordable units in the state, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. We thought this project would complicate it to go affordable, and it may not qualify for the tax credits that might be necessary on the affordable side to get there. With the updated QAP, we're not sure it would be as competitive as some larger developments. What are the benefits to the town? Ground lease payment to the town, new property tax revenue to the town, not asking for capital improvements or capital funding from the town. And we're improving the asset with private capital in the national and state tax credit program. My plan has no impact to the footprint of the building. We're not expanding it. We're using what is there. There might be, once we do a further design set, there might be some sidewalks necessary. And the biggest infrastructure change is going to be the septic. That's really the only digging we're really envisioning, is figuring out how to remove that septic safely and appropriately and place it with a system that makes sense. As I mentioned, the historic tax credits are cornerstone for this project. Currently not seeking any affordable credits to help fund the capital stack. And a lot of this is based on restoring the asset, and it's using what is there, using the corridors, using the stairwells, using the window openings and the door openings, and enhancing what is there without completely changing the structure. What are we asking for support? We're not asking for money. We're asking for support when we do seek some state funding programs. We are asking for a tax abatement during construction and stabilization. And the ground lease that we work out, we would like a deferment to get us through a stabilization period. Every dollar we use to acquire the building, or every dollar we use for upkeep and payments to the town during this critical phase, is a smaller loan amount that we can seek from the bank partners that we work with. So we want to get as much of the money that we're going to use into the building, into the project. Once stabilized, this will have a great economic benefit, foot traffic, and revenue to the town. I have reviewed the environmental reports. All these historic buildings have HBM, hazardous building materials. That is expected when we're seeking these projects. We know that we're going to face them. There are different avenues on how to correct those issues. I don't have a full plan of how we will approach this, but I have our history of what we've done in the past. We will seek consultants and environmental professionals to do that cleanup work to make sure whatever we build will be safe, regulated, and approved for the tenants that live there. Septic system. This is the big one. We know this has to be replaced. We need to do a new study to know what will fit this new proposal. We know that there's some concern on disturbing the ground and the groundwater impact. This is something that will likely go down the road, come up with a plan, and then seek some help from Brownfield. We need to know more before we know what that plan is going to look like and what we will seek for funding. What are our sources of capital? We're still evolving that, but core to it, as I mentioned, is the state and federal historic tax credit. This will fund close to 45% of this project cost, which means we're going to have to come up with private equity, Connolly equity money, seeking additional outside partners. This is funded through Connolly. Construction financing with one of our bank partners. And we would then seek additional programs that might assist in the capital stack, but are not core to this build out. Brownfield is one of them. I do have some updated project economics, although these are still preliminary. These are still early, that we don't have a full design set on how much this will, on the exact changes that we're making, but we're looking at an $8 to $10 million build for the 25 units. And again, the 25 units we're seeing as a minimum. We think we can get a few more once a full design is implemented. Since Connolly was not part of my original proposal, I wanted to list some of their projects so you could get this, an idea of their scope and size of the developments that they work on. Gate Apartments, 204 units, affordable. Clarendon Hill Towers in Massachusetts, large development, 501 units, a lot of affordable units, Section 8. All managed by our internal property management team. Project Hope, a partnership with 100 units, Section 8 and senior. And then we have Schoolhouse Apartments in Attleboro. This is another conversion, 27 units, a similar size, definitely a different feel and layout. And this one is designed as affordable senior. So at this stage, I didn't bring renderings or plans. I have our conceptuals that I've described to you. Happy to answer as many questions that clarify those gaps.
Get to go first this time. Great. Can you guys hear me okay, or is this the weird mic that cuts out? All right. Thank you for your presentation. Certainly, I guess I'm left with a few question marks. I'm not going to lie, given some of the assumptions being made. I think the first question I have is related to the cost estimate that you're putting out there of, in the range of 8 to 10. I mean, we had a community center that
candidly, we couldn't build for 15.9 million, went to a total cost of 24 million. Yet we're talking about a build here of 8 to 10 plus a septic. So I guess, how confident are you in your estimate?
So this is a common question that comes up. And the answer I've given in the past has been, is part of it due to when a town goes out and seeks construction on a project, they're getting a price that's 2 or maybe 3x what we're doing with in-house developers. When I built out a lot of my historic development units, we're doing it now 200, 250, 300,000 a unit. And that's in line. And I think there's more room in this project than I've given in other projects. We're also looking at this as a low touch development. We're not doing a full gut. We are adding all new systems, but I'm not going in and demoing every wall that I see. I'm reusing and restoring the structure and fabric of those units right now. When you walk into the building and you walk down the corridor, that's going to be the same corridor. Maybe it's going to be a new floor or an updated floor or a cleaned and painted and encapsulated wall. But you're going to walk into a classroom, and that classroom is now a unit. Did I take all the walls out? Did I replace all the windows? I've been to the building. Those windows are, I think they must have been replaced at some point. They're not 150-year-old windows. Restoring those makes more sense. Doing that low impact makes more sense. As much as I can do to restore is less I'm going to spend. So when I look at a unit, look at a classroom, and subdividing the space, I'm documenting everything for historic, for anything that has to be replaced or restored, but then I'm adding to it, I'm not removing. That's my best answer.
Then what about just general experience in the Connecticut shoreline? You guys, I saw a couple of examples. They seem like they were in other states, but what do you have that we can point to here locally in Connecticut?
Sure. Most of my adaptive reuse projects have been in the New London area. Now, I didn't list those here. Some of those are in my original proposal, and that's my history. That's my background. We've done those same types of developments, similar size buildings, larger buildings, 32 units, 16 units, all adaptive reuse in the New London area. We're doing it at a price point that's similar to what's presented here. And I think some of that is due to my approach, using what is there, doing a common sense approach, and treating it as an investor would treat a deal where we're not going in and just seeking as much state money as possible so the developer fee grows. There's 2 different ways to do development. I think that's the other side of it. You could do a development, spend 20 million, get a larger development fee. There's no residual or cash flow. You're just breaking even. On the other end, one of the avenues, that reason they brought me into Connolly, is to build more adaptive reuse projects, multifamily, market rate, that strengthens their portfolio because they have a large affordable component. They're balancing it with the projects that I'm bringing in.
Hi, thank you. One of the topics I don't believe we touched on in the presentation was parking. Do you plan on developing parking for the units or relying on shared municipal parking?
My initial approach was a shared municipal approach for parking. I think parking is a collaborative discussion. What is the town seeking? What do they think is necessary? This is a transit-oriented development area. The goal of those areas is to be less reliant on vehicles. If there is land appropriate for parking to add that space, that's something that we can consider doing for this project. It was my interpretation that a better approach of what the town was seeking is update the building. Let's use what we have as facilities. Let's use the parking we have and go from there. But we're collaborative. If there's room for some additional parking, that can be in the budget.
And one other question, have any previous developments utilized the shared community spaces such as those paddle courts you mentioned? If so, how has that been managed? And if not, how would you propose to manage it?
So that's a new concept for that type of space. The dance and fitness studio is more utilized. We primarily seek a commercial operator to take on that space. We will do the build out as part of our development. We'll seek that operator to come in and partner with us to do that project, to be part of it. That's our goal. That's what we would like to have. Now, we have discussed the backup is we're really just renting those spaces. They are even the fitness and dance studio, we're envisioning it, renting it as a timeshare to multiple different teachers, for example. Now, the paddle's a similar situation. There's technology that allows us to do that management if an operator isn't found. We're renting that space, maybe not daily, but we're renting it per the hour. There's technology that helps our property managers add that to their bucket of development work set.
Thank you. I'm curious, the price point of the units, you said market rate, where would these price out? We don't have a lot of rental units in Madison. And so trying to get an idea of comparability, because also based on the budget, it doesn't appear you would be putting a lot of higher end finishes into this. So it'd be helpful if you could talk about that.
So I know the price is throwing you off. These will be full amenity units. All the developments that I've done have granite counters, brand new kitchens, washer and dryers in the units, tile bathrooms, tile. You'll see from my experience when I walk into the units that I've done using the tax credit program, a lot of the money goes into the property instead of soft cost or other things that may drive it. I've seen units develop as affordable at 600,000 a unit that aren't anywhere close to the quality that I'm proposing this project. There is money for those things. It is not a huge cost driver. A lot of the bones are here, and a lot of I know some of the units have hardwood floors. All the projects that I take on have historic hardwood floors. We're not replacing the floors. We're finishing. This has a mixed bag. It has some carpeting, some tile, and some hardwood I've seen, I believe. But I am planning on higher end finishes for these units. Did I answer? Did you have a second part of that question?
No, I just had it roughly what those, rental prices would be. I think you quoted you have 1 and 2 bedroom mix, right?
Yes. So from my experience, I haven't done a market study, especially in Madison specifically, but in New London, which I think is, Madison should fetch a different price point than New London. We're building out units in the starting rate for those. 1 bedrooms can be 1,800, going up from there, depending on the quality or the view of those units. 2 bedroom units, 2,400, I think is what we've seen. There's going to be some difference in this market. I'm not sure if that pushes it up or down.
Evening. Should your analysis and consultants eventually determine that the construction budget is substantially higher than you currently think it is this project still going to be viable for you?
One of the advantages of the historic tax credit program as it scales with your project. So I have done some developments and maybe I missed the mark. Let's say I missed the mark by $1 million. I have a partner. My partner, the state and federal tax credit program, is still going to contribute 45% of my overage to that project. So I think that scaling does allow for us to do a development and have a slightly bigger range if necessary. And we're not attacking a lot of programs here. My going in position is to mainly focus on the CT and federal state tax credit program. There are other programs. If it was necessary, we could add to those, and maybe not do full affordable, but there are other programs out there that might say, let's add 2 to 4 units affordable to increase our capital stack. It might be another program, grant program, because we're in a transit-oriented development. We haven't touched all those for this project. We are going to seek them, but they're currently not necessary to make the project viable.
Maybe to ask the same question a slightly different way. And one question that was asked in the prior presentation, what are the assurances that the project will actually be completed?
So with every one of my RFP developments that I've worked with the municipality, there is always a clawback component because there's always a risk. And I've seen a few where I was the third RFP after they've done it for 10 years and they selected a developer and they spent 3 years and they didn't do anything. I always suggest to the towns, there has to be a time limit. We need to spend money on this project by a certain point that it's feasible to know that there's assurances. You don't want us to walk away. You don't want another developer to walk away. Once we're invested, the only way to finish the project is to complete. The only way to get our money back is to complete. We're going to be, once the train is started, we're going to completion. There's no alternative. And Connolly and Partners, and one of the reasons I'm happy that I moved there, they're a bigger organization. They're well capitalized. They fund their own projects. That gives options. This is a small development for a bigger firm. The average development size, Connolly is 50 million. We're seeking a project that's going to be in the 10. They're there, they have the backing to do the project with or without the backing of the loan programs or the other programs that we're going to seek.
Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, you mentioned 2 primary avenues for the town to realize revenue from this project, the ground lease payment, and you phrase this interestingly, new property tax revenue from building improvements. Are you proposing that the taxes would only be on the improved component of the building?
On the property tax side, it's really just a standard, what is the property tax of the building after we develop based on the mill rate. However I phrased it, I don't know. But that's all I meant by that. And we are seeking to acquire the property. And we're not looking, this is always a catch. You know, I know people get hung up on this. I never proposed offering an acquisition price for these properties. I always seek that every dollar that we're putting in is actually going to something. We're putting it into the project, to the building. Now, was suggested in the request for interest was ground lease arrangement, I believe, and we're open to that. I think having something there, I'm not sure what that looks like. I think that's a negotiation. That's a discussion. What is the priority for the municipality? Is the revenues from the taxes once we've increased value sufficient? Is there more necessary? And it all has to be feasible because it has to work with the financial stack and it has to work with the loan programs that we're going to seek. And if there's a bigger necessity to have more revenues come from the project, that means we're going to have to seek other programs. We're going to have to make it a little more complicated. Doesn't mean the project doesn't work. I don't really know what the town is looking for when it comes to a ground lease.
Thank you. You mentioned an abatement during a stabilization. What do you typically estimate a stabilization time?
So some municipalities have a program. I don't know if Madison does. Usually from construction, CO, there's a few year period that taxes might slowly step up over 5 years to get to a full tax rate. And that it does help. It might not sound like a lot, but it does help because every dollar that goes to that expense is a debt service coverage issue with bank financing. So if we're spending $1,000 here, we might not be able to get $100,000 out from the bank to do the construction.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. I appreciate it. We will make these presentations available on the website tomorrow for the public, so you can kind of peruse the PowerPoints. So that does include item 4 on our agenda, which is the expression of interest responses. Our board will take this up in another meeting in the future to kind of decide how to proceed. And I know the board has got a lot of thinking to do about how to move forward. And with that, I guess we will open this up for public comment. And as I mentioned at the beginning, public comment is, we'll take everything down for the record. This won't be kind of a back and forth question and answer session. This was kind of an intake session for the Board of Selectmen as well as the people presenting to us. So, but if you have specific questions, we will post tomorrow the Ask Academy email address again, and people could always submit in writing if there's very specific questions. I just want to highlight that this is a very preliminary stage in this process. So, that's where there might be a lot of detailed questions that neither the respondents or the board would be prepared to answer at this point. I think if we proceed with one proposal or a different process after a meeting at the end of January, that's when I think we would have a much more robust kind of Q&A from the public as we did with other projects. So, but with that, happy to take some public comment now. And we'll start with in the room, and we ask that you limit your comments to the agenda item today, which is proposals, and then and keep them brief because we have other people here. So with that, I guess we'll start out in the room. I see a hand right there. If you want to state your name and address for the record, please.
I also have.
Microphone, please.
Yeah, maybe you can come to the podium if you're called up for that, and we'll just take the mic there and you can see your comment.
Hi, Jennifer Rodriguez, 45 Johnson Lane. I also have a business in town, and that property is located at 141 Durham Road. I guess I'm just confused about why we're here, or if I'm late to the party at this stage of what's going on with Academy. I'm very sure everybody in this room knows the history, so I won't go back to 2002 when you guys, not you, but the town quietly closed Academy when seemed like the population of the town wanted it to stay open as a school. But some years ago, I don't even remember when, it was, we got to do something with Academy. You guys, again, sorry, saying you guys as in the Board of Selectmen at the time, decided they were going to spend money on hiring a consultant about what should we do with it. And do people want it for the town? Do we want to have a restaurant there? Do we want to have businesses there? There were, I don't know how many meetings over at Polson. And then we had the town referendum. And it seemed to me that there was a pretty significant population, part of the population said they wanted Academy to stay town property for town use. So I don't know why we're again considering private use for this property. And it's really disappointing that people didn't approve the raise in taxes so we could get an actual community center. But it seems like we're getting a bait and switch here. Oh, sure, we'll do the community center. Sure, we'll do it. And now we're at a spot where, guess what? We're going back to private options where really not going to help our tax base that we've talked about. The 3.3 million is, turns out over 20 years is 165,000 when we have, I don't know how many million in our annual budget anyway. So I just wanted to express my disappointed that we're here again, and I hope that we're able to find a way to use that property for town use, even if we have to end up raising the building and just turning it into a beautiful park. That's the end of my comments. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Any other hands raised here? Would like to make a comment? Yes, please. So if you go up to the podium and use the microphone.
I don't think we should close this meeting without a little look back to the last referendum for essentially approving free money to finish the community center. It was 70% of the voters voted against continuing with the community center by adding more money. And that was a pretty strong sentiment from that said, let's go back, let's raise the building, let's put something there and take our time, see what we can do with the property. But everything that was talked about or proposed was town use. This land doesn't belong to the Board of Selectmen. It belongs to the people of Madison. And if the people of Madison expect it to be used as a town resource, it should be used as a town resource. It shouldn't be given to low income or high income. I think we are way off track, and I think this is nothing but a stalling tactic to just try to wear people down. But I think what I'd like to please ask, don't forget what 7% of the people in the town voted for, not that very long ago.
Matt, any other hands in the room? No? Anybody have hands raised online? I don't know, can we see the Zoom on the screen?
No, it's on my computer. There are no hands raised online.
Okay. So these were questions I know that were submitted that we were gonna kind of type up and have available for the public viewing when we go through the question session. So those will be available to online. There's no hands raised for comment? Okay. Okay, well, I guess one last call. Okay. I know there'll be a lot more public conversation about this. And I do want to just emphasize again that ultimately anything that happens with this building is going to be a community decision. We've always had votes on this, so everything will be voted on by the public. And with that, I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn? All right, all in favor, say aye.
All right, thank you.